I think that did it. Hello. How are y'all today? We have our wait, this direction. She's back here. We have our Crystal, our live stream. The live stream champion of this channel. Welcome to today's live stream. My name is Tracy Lenz. I'm a petroleum engineer, and we are doing a weekly live stream where we cover a topic and then we also go into your Q&A. So if you have a question that you've been always wondering and you're not even sure if you should even ask an expert, this is your chance. So we cover anything that's oil and gas related. We typically do things that are minerals and royalties related, but working interest and overrides and just general oil and gas is on the table also. And we also have a valuation platform. I should plug that in the beginning, that we have pecanestimate.com, and it is a public platform. You can go and put your minerals in and get your valuation, get your revenue, see which wells you should be paid on. We have different tiers and levels to fit your different needs, all the way from a $100 like one-time check all the way to a fully managed portfolio. So let us know if you ever need any help with that. I think I'm getting a couple dropped frames, so let me know if the video gets a little weird. So, hi Fred, hi Martha, hi Tobacco Row. I know. Okay, Alice said she's watching, so I don't know if she's just not chatting or if she's actually not watching. I know that she has painters at her house right now, so that is the status. We're missing Mary from class today. Martha, you need to get on to her on that. Okay, I'm kidding. So today's topic. Oh, hi Alice. Just let the dogs in. Okay. Yeah. So I thought I would have to bribe Crystal to come join us for live stream today. She decided it was time to lay on her bed after all. So. Okay, so as I've mentioned in the title of today's stream, we're doing a special episode on Oklahoma pooling, and it applies to other states in some ways, and it doesn't apply to other states in others. So we will cover that, and let's see. Did this get populated? Oh, it didn't quite get populated. Okay, this is not what we're talking about today. This was, if you missed it, this was last week's. Let me just refresh this. There we go. Okay. Today's topic, Oklahoma poolings. Alice, if I had it feels weird to call you Alice. Alice is my mom, for anyone watching this that doesn't know. But I figured it's easier than calling her mom on live stream. If I had the little, like, I have some. Yeah, I don't have Who Let the Dogs Out. Wait.
By my shaggy bark.
That's Sydney's favorite sound effect. So that's kind of similar. Okay. Wait. I do have this one. Okay. Sorry. Distraction. I will stop myself from getting distracted. All right. So today, Oklahoma pooling. It's something that we get a lot of questions on because it's a scary letter that you get in the mail, and it's something that it sounds like maybe you're in trouble, maybe you have to do something, and you should do something. But it's 30 pages long. It's a legal document. It's a court order. What is it, and what is it even saying? It's a lot of legal jargon. So we're going to go into it. There is math behind it. We're going to walk very slowly through the math, and hopefully in an understandable way on how the math checks out and why there's different options and how those different options affect you and why they're presenting those options. So hopefully this is something that everyone can just come along with the ride with. We will have a comparison at the end. I know that not all of y'all have stuff in Oklahoma. So at the end, there's several other states that I'll be covering just broadly, like how does this state handle it in comparison to what we're talking about today. But because Oklahoma forced pooling is so specific and widely used, it's a topic that comes up quite a bit, and I wanted to handle that one specifically on its own. So that's today's topic. So we'll go through the process, the 4 steps. They give you like a menu of 4 different things to choose from, and they give you a clock that you have to pick within that time frame for, and then also like the hey, it's okay, the okay at the end. And then we'll go through a real example. We'll look at possibly a couple different pooling orders, just so that you can see like how this actually looks in the real world. This has been going on for decades. This is not a new thing. However, it's becoming more and more prevalent as wells get longer, and we'll talk about why that's the case. So yeah, and then as we go, if you have questions as we go, feel free to put them in the chat. I have the chat up where I can see it. However, I might put aside questions that aren't related to pooling until after we're done talking about that topic, and then we'll hit those at the end. So buckle up. We are about to dive in. Okay, if I can remember which button to click. How are y'all doing today? Is it a good Tuesday for everybody? School starts tomorrow here. So that's what we're up to. I have a sleeping daughter because it's the last day of summer. She needs to wake up soon, but that's for after live stream. Okay. Oh, is this the one? Yeah, we'll do. Okay, we're going to switch to this screen actually. And I have y'all's chat open. I will open the chat, but just to keep the actual presentation itself easier to read, easier to see, we'll switch to this view. So what pooling means for mineral owners, it's not a lawsuit. It looks like a lawsuit, but you're not being sued. So what is it? And off we go. Okay, so what usually happens is, and this is the common story that I get, is people who maybe you don't have a ton of minerals to where this is not a common occurrence. And I see this all over on the Mineral Rights Forum, people getting these things in the mail, these big packets. It is a pooling packet that you get in the mail from the Oklahoma Corporation Commission process that looks like a lawsuit. It's a legal document, but it's an application to pool every owner in a drilling unit. And that probably, if you've never heard those words before, that doesn't mean anything to you, but just keep that here and we'll continue. So why you got it is that you own minerals somewhere in a box that they're wanting to put a well. So somewhere in that box, someone wants to drill a well, and they're trying to get everyone in that box to agree to drilling that well. However, not everyone has signed an agreement. So this is the thing they do if not everyone has signed an agreement. So you're not selling your minerals. You still have your minerals. You're not having to let go of your minerals, but it does affect the amount of income that you're going to get. So we'll go into that a little more. Okay. So what's in the packet is you have the case number for the commission, what relief they've sought. Oh, I should put ahead of time, I am not an attorney. I'm not a legal person. I'm an engineer. You are watching this free on the internet right now. You get what you pay for. So I mean, I've done a lot of research on this. I do have full documentation that I'll be putting in the description. And then I'm also going to be putting a blog post on our website, pecanog.com. We have a blog where I'm slowly getting more of our stuff out on that blog so that more information and post summaries and video summaries are out there. And then we'll also be making this its own video with all of those things linked together. Because I know that this is not always a topic that someone, remembers when it comes around to them, every couple of years. So all of these links will be in the description, in short. So we have on the pooling, and let me pull up. So this is actually, I'll paste this right into here. All right. So this is Tobacco Row. This is from your example. I figured I'd go ahead and take this as a screenshot. So on the first page, you'll see something like this where you have the applicant, like what company is asking for it, what relief is sought, like what are they asking to do, what's the legal description of the lands that they're wanting to do this on, The cause number and the order number are good things to keep in mind because this is how you can look it up later and figure out what actually happened and reference it. The date and place and time and the order of the commission is what you're looking for. So there's going to be a lot of filings if you look up the cause and the order, but the actual final order is the one that matters because they have to present a bunch of cases and stuff. So let me move this to where it's smaller. This, and just as a side note, this is from 2011. They look very similar nowadays. I did pull a recent one. However, my computer shut down since when I opened it. So actually, no, I don't have that one up. So, it's been one of those mornings. Okay, you'll have the exhibit, which has the names of all the respondents. If a name is not on the respondents list on the back of, it'll have a whole bunch of names and addresses. It just means that they're leased. It doesn't mean that they're not an owner in that well. It just means that they're not an owner that's having to go through this process. And then what formation, what spacing order, we'll talk about what those things mean. What authority do they have to do this? And then what attorney? I mean, that's the legal part of there. So I do want to back up a little bit because what exactly are we talking about? So a well, when it's drilled, has a certain amount of drainage that is expected to be drained from the reservoir. And anyone who has minerals in that box of land should be paid for the minerals that are being extracted from that land. And that is called the spacing unit or the drilling unit, or there's several different terms. We've talked about this in past live streams. So that's especially relevant for this topic here, where we're talking about poolings. So in Oklahoma specifically, it's a public land survey system state. So where there's townships and ranges. So townships are, let's see, and I have, let me go to my map and I will show you even more specifically what if my computer lets me. Come on, computer. There we go. Okay, so I have Oklahoma open on my map here, and here is Payne County just as an example. So we're just in Oklahoma. So if I zoom in on Oklahoma, boy, I tell you, recording. So I'm recording this video for posting later, live streaming, and running this mapping program. Like my computer is really feeling it right now. So I apologize if there's any lag. Hopefully it's not too bad. I'm not seeing dropped frames, but I'm also don't fully trust OBS. Okay, so if I turn off the wells, that should actually make it a little easier to see. So here we are in Oklahoma. There's townships going north and south, and then there's ranges east to west. And each one is 6 miles wide and 6 miles tall. I'm going to call it tall. We're going to call it tall. 6 by 6 miles. Each one of these little boxes is a mile. And as I zoom in, and I turn on the layer that has the section numbers, I had abstracts on. There we go. So as I zoom in, you'll see that, oh, that's a lot of section numbers. We don't need that many section numbers. Okay. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it kind of goes in an S shape as you go down. And all across the state, this is how it works. So you'll have a township that will be referenced, a range, and then which section. And so that's how you find, so county, and then you find the township and range, and then you find the section being referenced. So in the email, in the pooling, here we go. We have, from this example here, we have Township 19 North, Range 4 East, Payne County. So that's the legal description that's being talked about. And if we go back to the map, that is this blue section here that I've outlined. So it is section 33. So this is the specific section that is being referenced in this pooling that we're using in our example. Okay, back to here. So this just puts it in kind of cartoon form, but if you're in a different state, your state might have a different structure. So for example, the 13 original colonies are meets and bounds, I believe, almost 100%. Some areas follow something similar to this, but if you're in a meets and bounds state, it basically means that you don't have pretty squares and boxes. It's whatever that state happened to set up for their surveys before the public lands system was established, or they did it instead of it. So most of the United States is this system here. However, Texas is not. So a lot of you might be thinking, I've never seen this before. It might be because you have Texas, West Virginia is not. So I know a lot of our audience right now probably is not familiar with this township and range system. However, since we're talking about Oklahoma today, everything will be in the township and range system except for some like weird oddities around like the borders, and even then it should get you to the right place, and then just talk about like the lot or and even then that's still technically that same system. So yeah. Now when we're talking about wells, modern wells can be drilled. There's 4-mile laterals. So a 4-mile well would be stretching all the way across 4 of these sections. Historically, only 640 acres, which is one of these sections, has been pooled together. But what happens if you have a well that's drilled? How do they even drill wells that are 4 miles long? A more typical well is 2 miles long, and so that would be 2 of these sections together. But even still, you still have to get permission to do that. And so how are they doing that? And that's how pooling comes in. If I go back to the desktop and I turn on the wells, in this particular area, they've done only 1-mile laterals. This map is showing red wells are shut in, and so this is meaning that this well stopped producing in 2024. However, if I zoom out, you'll start to see that this is kind of a typical pattern where they've drilled one well in some of these areas. But if I go to some of these other more developed areas, with each one of these lines being a well going through the reservoir and draining all across the line, you see ones that stretch across the entire 2 miles. So that's what modern wells typically are. You'll see a pooling order for something that includes 2 sections, not just one, is what that comes down to. Nope, this one. Okay. Now, there are rules that the Oklahoma Commission has in place. However, the name of the game is really just getting approvals to do things that you need to do, whether or not it's following existing rules or if you're having to get clearances to do it. And these are all the non-legal terms for it, but that's basically what the operators are doing. They're saying, we want to do this for the benefit of the reservoir, for the benefit of all the owners of the reservoir, and can we please, pretty please do that? Now, the unit sizes are rules that the commission has put into place in order to help the commission decide quicker if that's something that can just be quickly approved, or if it's a weird thing that needs to have like special approval. So oil above 4,000 feet deep has a 40-acre max unit size. Oil from 4,000 to 10,000 feet deep has an 80-acre max size. Oil below 10,000 feet has 160 acres max size. And you might be thinking, what? We were just talking about 640 acres. My pooling order has a 1280 acre. That's way bigger than those. And that's because there are horizontal well tolerances, and a lot of the horizontal wells are considered gas wells. There's a lot. That's what I'm saying. Like there's rules, but then there's almost always the exception, and that's how they end up doing what they need to do. So if you're looking at how to view this, though, is if you're looking at an older vertical well, you're probably looking at something that has a much smaller unit, a much smaller pooled, and a much smaller acreage bit that's being drained, and a much smaller stamp of footprint of the owners who are being paid than these newer wells, which have much bigger units. Okay, why is this? So, like I said, they are trying to do things the most efficient way possible. So the commission, and this is their words, to avoid the drilling of unnecessary wells or to protect correlative rights shall, blah, 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 require such owners to pool and develop their lands in the spacing unit as a unit. So kind of make everybody play along for the benefit of everybody. That's basically what it's saying. And so the different states go about this different ways. So, for example, in Texas, pooling is something that is common. And you might be thinking, well, we don't have these orders that go out in Texas nearly as often. Maybe you have minerals in both Texas and Oklahoma, and you don't see this in Texas like you do in Oklahoma. And that's because Texas has a different way to go about protecting the development of the reservoir and the protection of the mineral owners and the state lands. And typically it's so this goes back to our warm-up question, actually. So our warm-up question was, is pooling and forced pooling the same thing? And Fred, I see you answered and said, no. It sounds like forced pooling doesn't give you any options. So yes and no. Forced pooling doesn't give you an option not to pool, but it does give you options on how you're being pooled. So yes, pooling itself is more of an umbrella term for all the different types of pooling that can be done. So in Texas, the equivalent of forced pooling, where the state is forcing this pooling to happen, is a MIPA, M-I-P-A well. So if you ever see MIPA in the well name, that means that there was a forced pooling enacted for that particular well. But it's not common in Texas. It's usually like the last ditch effort, and normal poolings, we'll just say voluntary poolings, are more normal, where you get all the owners to agree to pool their lands, and that's how they're being paid, as opposed to it being a forced thing. While in Oklahoma, it's kind of the default. The default is to forced pool. And I would actually say it's probably more of an issue of people just going, companies just checking the box exercises when it comes to trying to actually lease and going any other route. And forced pooling is just kind of the default. So that's why it's such a big topic in Oklahoma versus any other state. 12:30. Just checking my time. So the process. How it happens. Since the point of a pooling order is to help the lands actually be developed in an effective and efficient way, there is a timeline to this. It's not just a once we get everybody to agree situation. There's actual rules and timelines, and it does sometimes take a long time to get through the whole process. However, once thank you, Whitney. However, once you get through the process, each step has a very short timeline. So that's why it's good to keep up with what's happening on your lands, because you might not have much time to respond in order to have full control over what's actually happening with your minerals. So it starts with the application. Then there's a notice, and the notice happens 15 days at least before the hearing. Then there's the hearing where the judge hears all of the reasons. And then there's the actual order. Now, there could be a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes when it comes to all the stuff ahead of time, because that's where some of the, the drama, the tea of behind the scenes is kind of fun to guess what's happening. And I've been part of that side of it where you're kind of fighting to see who gets the right to drill the well and who gets the pool. And how it works is, oh, hi, Mary. How are you? Sorry, distraction. How it works, let's see. I think I have the next slide. Okay, you know what? I won't get distracted on the exciting part, but I will remember to talk about that. So, like I said, they have to try to find you first. That's part of the hearing, is they're making sure that there was an attempt to lease all owners. And if that attempt was not done, if you can't prove that you attempted it, then that's the judge is like, no, you got to at least try. Come on. Like, you have to have due diligence to try to find all the owners. And the point of forced pooling, it's a fallback in case they can't find all the owners, or in case they can't get somebody to cooperate or respond. The forced pooling allows development to still happen, even if there's one person within half an acre in the corner of a section that says no. Because otherwise they're taking stuff from the public without permission. So there has to be some guiding rule around how this is being governed. But they have to make an attempt to go through normal processes first. So that's the first part of it, and that's part of the hearing. And that's also, you should receive something, especially if they have your address. You should receive some communication from somebody. However, like I said, it's becoming more of the default. So they might make a weak attempt to contact you and then go straight to the pooling. So the hearing in your voice, so you can protest it if you're like, whoa. They know exactly how to contact me. They have not tried to contact me, or I was legitimately trying to negotiate a better lease and they just ignored me flat out. You can go and protest. You can say, no, they weren't listening to me. They ignored me. Here's all my attempts to contact them to try to lease. And they said, no, we don't. And I was being reasonable and they weren't being reasonable. It has to be a reasonable attempt to create a contract between the owners of the property before the government can come in and say, no, you have to give your this forced pooling here. Yeah, okay. So then the order arrives, and this is after they decide who is the operator, what lands are being pooled, what depths are being pooled, what wells are being proposed. And the drama kind of behind some of that is really, you just have to have a little toehold of interest in that section in order to propose a well. And then once you propose a well, you have to prove that you're the best operator for that particular part of land. So nobody else is wanting to drill a well that has more claim to that section than you do. Maybe the other operators, because, there's, and I know that this is getting into the weeds, but just letting you know that there's sometimes fighting that's happening behind the scenes between two different companies that are trying to control that section of land. So if you're getting two competing leasing offers, or if you see two different company names in the hearing and the orders and all those things, that's probably what's going on, is they're competing to see who gets the rights to drill that well. Okay. The operator has to commence the well in 180 or about a year, 180 days or a year. It will say that in the term. And it will also give you a menu of things to select from. So that's also the thing to recognize, is that the order date starts your election clock, not the day it reaches your mailbox, which is rough because it's a really short clock. So your election, here's the part that scares people, because it says you have to do something, and none of this stuff makes sense to most people. So normally, so these are all example offerings. But normally there's about 4 selections that you can choose from. You can participate in the well, which means they'll say you have the right to take your interest and pony up money, that's your share of the well, to help drill the well, and then you'll get your full share of the revenue also. So full cost, full revenue. If there's companies that make a full strategy out of doing this, it's called being a non-op. We call it non-op companies, but it's a non-operating participating partner in the well. Most mineral owners aren't in the camp of, yes, I'd love to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to drill a well that I have no information on and no background and education on why or what they're doing. So most people are not in that category. And so it's usually an intentional decision if you decide to participate in the well. And for that reason, it is never going to be the default that they choose for you. So you don't have to worry about like, oh, if I don't respond, I'm going to have to participate. That's not the default. Then usually the next three options are, all right, we're going to assume you don't want to give us a bunch of money to drill this well. And we're going to assume that you would much rather just have us drill the well for you and then pay you a royalty. So the opportunity to do that is the bonus. And then the royalty is the percentage that you get off of anything the well makes. So those are the two numbers that you really have to know going into this, is that it's going to be how much you get up front and then how much you get over the life of the well. So usually there is a 1/8 bonus or 1/8 royalty. So usually there's a 1/8 royalty and then a higher bonus. This one's going to be the default that the state will choose for you if you don't respond. So this is the most important one to pay attention to, and it should specify which one is the default. But it's almost always, and I just say almost because I haven't seen every single one of them out there, the lowest royalty and the highest bonus will be the default. So you get the most cash up front and the smallest royalty share over the life of all the future wells in that section for that depth. And then they'll give you kind of a selection of other options. So you'll get either a smaller bonus with a slightly higher royalty, and then usually 20% or 25% is the top that they'll offer. In less active parts of the country, they might top out around 18 3/4, but usually 20%, 25%, or a fifth or a fourth royalty is the highest royalty that will be offered, and then either a small bonus or no bonus sometimes. So those numbers, we'll go into what specifically, like when does it make sense to choose one versus the other. We'll have a full walkthrough after this. Okay, so participating, again, that means you're investing. Be very aware of what you're doing before you select to invest and participate. And then also know that if you participate in the first well, you have to participate in the next well. And then if you ever elect not to participate in a well, you're out for the rest of the wells. So it's like an ongoing commitment or else you're out. So it's a working interest ownership. You should just really know what you're doing before anyone gets into any type of working interest situation. The bonus and the royalty seesaw, that is what we're mostly going to be digging into, is when do you want a bigger bonus and when do you want a bigger royalty? Because typically, if you give anyone the option, I want more money up front. But if you look at any of our recommendations and a lot of recommendations online, they'll say, oh, always pick the bigger royalty. It's not quite as clear cut as that. However, those are good rules of thumb. If you need more cash now, bigger bonus, yes. However, overall, the life of the wells, it will probably be better to pick the bigger royalty. Okay, this is the problem that people get into, though, is that there's only 20 days from the date of the order to the responding, and that's not very long if you consider even just, I know I don't check my mail every day. like just mailboxes just aren't the most common form of communication anymore. So just be aware if you do get something in the mail, check the date that they had on the order, because that's when the clock started. Okay, to deliver your election, it needs to be in writing to the named party. It's the postmark that matters. it goes to the next regular mail day. Keep the proof. This is always good in general whenever you're dealing with any of oil and gas situations. Like always keep a written record of what you did. Always keep a postmark trail. Keep things in writing. Those are just good rules of thumb. But like I said, if you do nothing, you're deemed to have elected the smallest royalty with the largest bonus. So that usually is not the best choice for owners. And we're going to go into why. But just real quick, you can still sign a lease. Just because the pooling has gone out doesn't mean you can't sign a lease. It just means that you have to move quick. And signing the lease during the window makes the lease govern things rather than the pooling order. After the order, it doesn't take your minerals. Like I said, it just affects how they pay you and what they pay you. It doesn't let the lease bonus vanish. So they owe you that whether or not they drill the well. And it doesn't run forever. So they only have that certain amount of time to drill that well, or else that pooling order goes away, right? If they have a clock, they have a responsibility to act on that order, or in order for that order to be ordered in order for the actual order to be in effect. So they have a commitment to make, and they do have to keep all that stuff papered up and documented. It doesn't skip the fact that there still needs to be a filing. You still need to prove that you're the owner. They still need to prove that all these things there's still all the evidence that's needed. So much order, yes. Okay, so when the money shows up is based on your selection, you'll get a bonus. And then the next bit of it, the royalty, might be a long time from now. Like it might be a year plus, it might be never if they never drill the well. But the order will say how long they have to commence a well. And then once they start drilling the well, my rule of thumb is 6 to 12 months that you might see the first check after they start drilling the well, just between completing it and getting it producing and getting all the division orders sent out and figured out. And then that first check to come in the mail is usually a long window of time. Okay, and again, if they don't drill the well, they still have to pay the bonuses. Yeah, the paper trail will be at the commission and the county clerk. Okay, other states, real quick. So before we jump into the math on how to select which option is best for you, other states, we talked a little bit about this. The Railroad Commission is Texas. It has a very narrow MIPA. I can't remember what the MI part, but it's a pooling application, I believe. If anyone knows that, go ahead and put it in the chat. But yeah, that's the one we talked about earlier. And then New Mexico has the Oil Conservation Division has a pooling order, and it is a little more common. It's kind of like a blend between these two states. West Virginia has a co-tenancy law. And I usually see voluntary poolings out there. However, it's not, this is just pointing out that different states have different ways to handle it. Co-tenancy means that there's just multiple owners in a set of in a spacing unit, basically, of a well that's being drilled. There's multiple owners that need to be handled somehow. And then in Louisiana, there's a state conservation office. There's a unit order. So there's a lot of resources around how your particular state handles it. So just know that Oklahoma's menu and deadline system is just one of several ways that states pool these owners. Okay. So if we look at the order that Tobacco Row sent over, so that one was, again, from 2011, but I know that I feel like that's actually a pretty good in between. The modern orders might have more language around it, but a lot of y'all are looking at older orders, also trying to figure out what happened in the past. So I did see your video that you sent over. or that you posted on your channel, Tobacco. And I will, I'll link that one also. So he goes through how he found the particular order and how you're using it. If you don't mind me linking it, I mean, it's on YouTube, but it's okay. Let me go to. Do I want to cover any of this other stuff before we go to more interesting things? Yeah, Tobacco Row, you're saying to track your mail and get email confirmation it was received. Yes, that is a good track your mail and get email confirmation it was received. Yes, there's a lot of nice tracking methods you can do. Yeah, so you're working on your family Bible history, and I think I mentioned this in a comment. That is a much more interesting application of oil and gas situations where you're using it to try to figure out what happened in the past, and then kind of stumbling across there's actual wells and orders. And the nice thing is I actually have ancestry.com installed on my computer because there's some clients that we have where the family history is so intricate, and it's such a big part of figuring out who owns what in the wells that being able to put it in a family tree in the hierarchy there really is the best way sometimes to view who's getting what and how did the minerals go from great 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 grandpa down to my cousin. So let's see. Yeah, 4 questions. Again, if you're just going to take away 4 things from this, look for the date of the order, what calendar day is the 20th day, what exact bonus and royalty pairs are on that particular order's menu because they're all different. Is there a lease offer that I've been presented that I haven't decided on? Because if they've offered it, that's still on the table until that order is played out. And then who is the Oklahoma oil and gas attorney for that election? So those are the things, because that's ultimately who you'd need to talk to. Yeah. So we're going to hop to look at this again. So this particular one, okay. So like I said, the most of the stuff you need to know is right here at the top. And then do try to read all this. I'd like to point out these days that you can take these notices. You can snap a picture with your phone and go to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, whatever your favorite, or Siri has I don't know how good Siri's is yet, like Apple's one, but these AI systems are getting much better at explaining what things mean. And so it can read the text off of your picture, and you can just say, explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Like, what is this saying to me? What is and you just keep asking questions about it, and know that there's some really nice skills that you can use with AI where you can ask it to prove what it knows. Like, how do you know that this is what it's saying? Can you point me to the document that is your reference for this, because it likes to make up things. That is one of the issues with AI, is that it likes to make up answers because it's trying to please you. AI is really more of it's a social, it's trained on social interactions. So just keep that in mind when you're talking to AI, that it's wanting to have a conversation with you, regardless of what it takes to have a conversation with you. And so you need to tell it how you want to have a conversation and give it a role of, okay, you're a expert landman, and I'm paying you lots of money to give me the best advice for my estate. what would you interpret this as, and what would you back it at? Like give it really specific instructions to go through and explain these notices to you, because it can point out things that you might not have seen otherwise. Even though I still fully appreciate that reading and using your eyes is the best way to absorb things. However, I'm also a fan of hearing things a multitude of ways. I think that's why y'all are here, though. So, okay, we have the relief requested is to pool under Exhibit A. They'll say this common source of supply is the reservoir. So that reservoir is the depth that they're specifically targeting for this order, and different depths can have different pooling orders assigned to it. So if you have one vertical well that has a 40 acre pooling, but it's really shallow, they can come in and drill deeper and have a completely different like spacing for that deeper section. So a lot of the stuff developing across Oklahoma right now is Mississippian or Woodford. You probably see those two names across Oklahoma right now. If you're in far western Oklahoma, like the Roger Mills kind of area, you might see things like Cherokee or Marmaton, Cleveland, Granite Wash, those names. However, Mississippian and Woodford is probably the bulk of poolings right now. Okay, so these numbers are ones that like to like scare people, honestly. You'll get the completed cost as a dry hole. A dry hole means the minimum cost that they have to spend in order to drill the well at all. And it's called a dry hole because it means that they didn't find enough oil there or enough oil and gas in order to pay for the rest of the completion. So it was dry. And so historically, that really meant you had not any oil. But nowadays, that usually means that they mechanically goofed and did something that caused like that well to just never produce anything. And so that's usually the minimum amount of cost that you would expect. And then the next one, the completed for production, is the cost to drill the well all the way to like producing. So this is the all-in cost. And what's funny is you can tell this is 2011 because this cost is only $2.4 million. And I say only because I think a more typical cost for these 2-mile horizontals is more like a $10 million bill. And keep this number in mind because it's a good rule of thumb for how much the present value of that well is overall, because they wouldn't be drilling a well, or they wouldn't be proposing to drill a well that was overall a bad deal for the people proposing to drill the well. So they're expecting to at least make this money back. If you're trying to get a good concept of how much royalties will be produced, not just for you, but for everybody. So then you put like your share against that total. So with that in mind, if you have a 1%, or we'll just say round numbers, 10% ownership in this well, if you elect to participate, that's $243,000 that you'll need to pony up if the well is completed. So just know that, and that's for these older wells. These newer ones, if you have a $10 million well and you have a 10% interest, that's $1 million that you're going to have to pony up to pay. So, oh gosh, Crystal must have been outside because she is just like, y'all actually might even be able to hear her breathing. It's like, goodness gracious. There she is. Okay. So then you get into these cash considerations. So cash considerations are the dollar per acre this is the bonus, and then this is the royalty. So the bonus per acre is how much you would get up front, and it's per net acre. So it's not, if there's 640 acres that they're pooling, you wouldn't get $100 times 640. You would get your 10 acres divided by the two siblings that are sharing that undivided interest like you get your, like you'd have to get it down to your net acreage, and then that's how much you'd actually get. So a lot of people overestimate how much bonus they would actually get from these wells up front because they're thinking that it's the total acreage times this number, and that's not the case. So keep that in mind. And then you go into, here's the slightly less per acre and a slightly higher royalty. And then you have no cash bonus and the highest royalty. And again, that's usually the best option, but we'll go into that. And then what happens if you don't elect? So almost all the time, it will go to the... it will tell you which. So 6B is what it will default to. This is that. Well, that's okay. I must have read that one wrong. That's when I'm trying to read stuff like on live stream is probably not the best way to read it. But yeah, it'll tell you what the default is. And then this is that part where I was saying if you elect in the first one, then you had to elect into future ones too. Or else you're out of the ones after that. And then it will go into who the operator is, how to contact them, who the, how long they have to commence those operations. Operations just being the drilling of the well, not the producing of the well. Don't need to pay attention to a whole lot of this stuff. Some of these are extremely long, so there's a lot of other stuff that can happen. And then it will go into the respondents with known addresses. So these are all the people who they are saying they're going to have to force pool because they don't have a lease with this person. And this is where they're going to get into, here's all the people that we sent something to. And then there's respondents without a known address. This one, yeah. Respondents with unknown addresses. That this is people that they've found in title that should have an ownership or that they believe have an ownership in this future well, but they don't actually know where they are. So this is where if you see, especially if you see a name in this list, that means that once they do drill this well, that most likely means that those funds will be in suspense because they don't know where to send them either. Even though there is that default of 1/8, you still are owed your royalties. They don't even know where to send this agreement to. But I've seen really silly reasons that they don't have this address on file, like, oh, well, we had Aura Smith's one on file, but not Aura B. Smith, or maybe they have the brothers, but they don't have the sisters, or like Sylvia's says she's deceased. Maybe they don't have the address of the person that it's going to. So yeah, Tobacco Row, you're saying that you have 7 family members on that list. Yeah. So a lot of times you can group together as a family and be like, here's all the stuff you need to know. Let's have a chat. But sometimes it's hard to get all that organization done in 20 days. So that's why it's good to get ahead of all this. And then, then they have some like last known addresses. And it is nice to use some of this as like, hints as to where, like, whoa, I didn't know that they had that address. Where are they getting that address from? And then you can kind of hunt down where they might have found that. So that is the demo. Oh, it's 1:00, but you know what? We're going to keep going because I made this, this file and I want to show it, dang it. So this is a very complicated spreadsheet. However, I want to show that, okay. And this is a pooling election trade-off spreadsheet where you can take let me make it to where y'all can see a little more of what I'm doing. Okay. This. Okay, so you can put in how many net mineral acres you own in the unit, and this assumes that this is the net interest. So if it's that you're maybe for this example, you knew that Sylvia had 40 acres and there's 10 cousins that all got it split equally, then you would put in 4 net acres. If you're Sylvia putting this in and you have all the acreage still, like hasn't been split any, then you put in 40. And then you put in the spacing size for the unit. So, okay, this is the 1280 pooling. I want to know what the numbers look like for this. And then this will tell you, okay, you have about a 3% share of the money that is of that well. Now, of any well drilled in that. And then you can go into, okay, what, you can kind of ignore all this stuff. But what matters is what really this comes down to is how many wells do you expect to be drilled in that section? And that is the ultimate thesis, is that if you expect wells to be drilled at all in that section, you should pick the higher royalty. If you don't expect wells to be drilled, or you think that they're just pooling it for, like they're just trying to get land because they're flipping, or they're not going to really drill a great well. They're just going to drill like a little dinky well to hold the land, and this is not like a long-term thing. Well, then that's when it gets a little more interesting as to which one to choose, because almost all the time, if you put in the election and the acreage, almost all of these deals will work out to where the amount that you're paid in bonus plus today's value of the future royalties will be greater if you choose the higher royalty, unless I reduce the number of wells to 0. If I reduce the number of wells to 0, then the numbers change. And I have a chart here that shows, okay, I'm just going to go through a couple situations where, can I zoom in? Let's see. Yeah, okay. That's probably good enough. Okay, if I have no royalties expected to be paid from wells, and that'd be if I expect this to never get drilled, if I think that this is just a bogus pooling that maybe I know a lot about this area and I think there's no way they're going to drill that well, or maybe prices just went crazy down. Fred, you have a question. It is the spreadsheet part of your system or somewhere else we can download? So I will put a download in the blog post to this spreadsheet, but there's things in this spreadsheet that you won't be able to get unless you, like, this is the very generic version of it. I'm happy to share, but we do have a more robust calculation if you're trying to figure out more details on these things. And we have automated and reports and all those things. But yes, we have a whole system on all of this. Thank you for asking. So almost all the time, unless you're expecting no wells to be drilled, if I put on even just one well right here, so if I expect one well, then the 12.5, like the default royalty is not going to be, like, if this is the total value to you on today's dollars, not like tomorrow's dollars added up and blah, blah, blah. Like today's value of those dollars is almost never going to be better to take the default. And that's really my issue with this, is that the default that most people get is not the best case, since the whole point of pooling is so they can drill a well. So most of the time they're going to be drilling a well. You're going to be in one of these situations here where something higher than a 12.5% royalty is better. And then if I, like a lot of these sections, 4 wells are drilled. So even if I just go up to 2 wells, like this math gets dramatically better for the higher royalty, because the more wells that are drilled, the more royalties you'll be owed. And that bonus is just a one-time thing, but the royalties compound, and they if you have 8 wells drilled, you'll get 8 times that, rather than just the one well. While you never get 8 times the bonus if they drill 8 wells. So that's why it really is a bet on how many wells you think are going to be drilled. And most of the time, it's going to be this type of economics here, where every time I zoom in, it just does something funny. But what if I zoom in through OBS? There we go. We'll do this. Okay. Sorry. Yes, you can do our system 1 month at a time. You can't get all of the information on the undrilled wells yet, 1 month at a time. A lot of this more in-depth stuff is on our core subscription, which is our, it is still month to month. It's $7.25 per month, while the essentials plan is $100 a month, unless you use the coupon code Calgary. So I still have the coupon code Calgary to save $50 on the essentials subscription. But that only has the currently producing wells. It doesn't go into the lease bonus calculations like this. But we can always, yeah, Whitney is currently, oh, you're not currently in Calgary, actually. But people are definitely at her house in Calgary. But Whitney is our Canadian. Okay, but what this is showing is this orange line is the highest royalty rate, while this light purple line is the lowest royalty rate. So this is the default, and this is using very typical. So what I plugged in here is a Woodford oily well, which is kind of a like best case, not best case scenario, but typical. If people are drilling in Oklahoma, they're probably drilling this type of well or better. So again, if they're just going to drill one well, if it's just a step out situation, if it's not, we recently did one where in the Western Anadarko Basin over towards where the Cherokee stuff was being drilled, the Cherokee is only being developed at 2 wells per section most of the time. So at most, they'd be drilling 2 wells. Then it gets a little more, okay, which one do I choose? And that particular acreage, it was kind of outside of the main play. And so, well, what if they only drill one? Well, if they only drill one, I don't know. Like that particular one, it was more of a toss up on what the best option was. And so that's where you talk it over with your advisors, talk it over with your CPA, look into the long-term effects of this, talk to an attorney about the lease terms, look at the post-production costs. Like there's a lot of other things that come into play if you're looking at just one well. However, most of the time that's not going to be the case. So I think I've drilled that in like sufficiently. I did want to point out just real quick that I put in there the operators. It didn't wrap correctly, but let's see if I can make it wrap. No, I'm not going to wrap, but let me wrap this and then we'll wrap today's show. So, oh, it's not showing the whole thing. I zoomed in too much. Okay, so why? All right, Excel is just deciding not to cooperate anymore. I've officially played with it too much. But you have the operator's value here. The operator will always have a better value if you choose the lower royalty rate, because they are planning on drilling wells, and that lease bonus really doesn't affect them nearly as much as it affects you. So just know that it's going to be a worse deal for them to pay you a higher royalty, which is why it's a better deal for you. Again, most of the time. So, if we go to, I don't mind looking at the map a little bit more here. So these Michelle wells, if I change this to a nice, there. Now we just have the outline. And we are at 1:12, and I do have a hard deadline. I need to get going soon, but actually I need to really go in like 5 minutes. But this particular one here, so that means that, yeah, these wells were drilled in 2013. So I know it's small on y'all's screen. But if I zoom in, this is the dates of production is 2013 to 2024. And this one was 2011 to 2022. So those were the dates of production for these two Michelle wells. And then there's also, if I turn on the verticals, that's what these dots are the vertical wells. So there's also these, if I go to, yeah, I have labels on. Okay. This is the Tony Dean #1. So the Tony Dean #1, with how these are titled, this is showing that this is no longer an active well. However, yeah, it's plugged and abandoned. Last production on this Tony Dean was 1996. So you'll often see that where there's kind of different waves that come through. And our last episode, we talked about the value wave, how there's like an exploration and development, and then you have the peak, and then it tails out. So this vertical development was the first wave coming through, and then this horizontal development was the second wave, and then there's actually a third wave that is happening in the area. And if I'll turn on our free market value map. I think I have. What do I have? Oh yeah, I gotta get going soon. I have too many things. Let me turn off the wells. That'll make it load faster. Oh, Mary, you need to find your math brain. Aw. No, I don't always explain math in ways that make sense to other people. So you're probably just fine. Sorry, cover that. Thanks, Fred. You're welcome. Oh, you don't owe me a tip at all, but thank you. I don't know if I was able to help you, Eddie, Tobacco Row, but hopefully at least the background on what's happening maybe is a little more clear. So this, okay, it loaded. This map here is our nationwide value map. We have it across the whole U.S. So if we look down into like Kingfisher and Blaine and Canadian and Grady, this area here is what the current wave, like where that value wave is peaking. And over here in some of these other counties where there's just like pockets of yellow, that's where it's more playing out the exploitation and late life phases of our value wave. So if you go back and look at our old videos, or last week's video, that's the value wave of this particular area, and looking at kind of a mid to low activity, and that's mostly because there's wells, but they're shut-in wells. There's some production, but it's not like the most, nothing to really write home about. but all of these wells, like if you have a good amount of interest in any of these wells, it could be something to write home about. The problem is that a lot of people watching this will have a 0.000001 interest in these wells, and it's just, it's just not the most effective. Tobacco Row, if you ever find wells that those wells and you wanna get a free month, we can give you a free month on the house for being one of our demo participants. So I have your email from today. I can happy to give you a free month of the platform. On our essentials thing. Let's see. Have to finish the 44 unclaimed properties first. 33. Yeah. So get everything organized, get it all together, and then plug it in and just see what our system spits out. So, and again, if you have a pooling order, if you'd like one of our team members or myself to look at it, we do have an engineer on call session that you can purchase in advance, and you have our full attention. We can use any of the tools at our disposal to work through your particular problem or question or do an analysis. A lot of times, little quick questions can be answered, and maybe it helps scope a bigger project. Maybe it's something you're not even sure how to get your head around. Those engineer on call sessions can be really great for that. Stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed so you get future episodes and future notifications of when we're going live. We do this once a week on Tuesdays at noon. Crystal's done, so that means I guess we're done too. So again, thank you for joining us, and I will see y'all next week. Bye.